love music. Music has been a very pivotal part of my life. To where I could probably say it's probably saved my life. And I say that because I've always been able to use music as a way to express my emotions. And I can guarantee you, I can identify a song that can express how I'm feeling in that moment. So in this particular moment, there's a song that comes to mind, and the song is called Remember the Music by Jennifer Hudson. And I absolutely love the song. But there's a verse in the song that says, in my past, it's been hard as hell. You will never know how much pain I felt. But everybody's got a story to tell. Sometimes you gotta face the music and play by yourself. So I want you all to remember that verse. But tonight I want to focus on the part that says, everybody's got a story to tell. And I'm going to raise the question to you all, who's writing your story? So I'm going to use the song to kind of share a little bit of my story with you all. Now, in my past, it's been hard as hell. What if I told you all that I grew up in a single parent household where we lived in what was considered the hood? I barely had a relationship with my father to where I can count on both hands how many times I've seen him face to face in my entire life. My childhood was pretty decent, not too bad, but at the age of 13, my life took a drastic turn. It was at this age that I was first diagnosed with having depression. Also during this time, I had came out. And this was back before it was a trend or the popular thing to do. So back then, it really wasn't as accepted as it is now. So back then, I had to deal with being bullied and being ostracized and just being treated differently by my peers. Also during this time, me and my mother had a very strained relationship, which resulted in me being put out of her house, which then resulted in me being voluntarily put into foster care. So I was in foster care for 3 years. I lived in 3 different homes, and I went to 3 different high schools. Apparently 3 was my number. At the age of 15, I had my first hospitalization for suicidal ideations. The night I got out of the hospital, my foster parent told me that I could no longer live in her house because I was gay, and that went against her religion. So I had to move. At the age of 17, I remember a worker telling me that I either had to stay in a home where I was unhappy, or I had to return home to my mother, because it was going to be very difficult to find a placement for a 17-year-old black male who was gay and had mental health challenges. So I returned home to my mother, which then resulted in my senior year of high school being one of the worst years that I've had in my academic career. But that's a story for another day. At the age of 24, after I had obtained my second degree, I had my second hospitalization after having a complete meltdown in the parking lot of my apartment complex. That was very wild. But it was then I was diagnosed with having major depressive disorder and an anxiety disorder. At 26, I was physically assaulted by 2 men. One who was never caught, and the second who was caught, but they let him go and nothing happened after that. And then at the age of 28, I was diagnosed with having bipolar 2 disorder. Now, that's a very condensed version, and I do mean condensed version, of some of the things that I experienced. But you will never know how much pain I felt. And I'm going to rephrase that and say, people never knew how much pain I was really in. Because we're taught that what goes on in this house stays in this house. We're taught that sticks and stones may break your bones, but words can never hurt you. We're taught to just go to church and pray about it because Jesus will fix it. Or we're taught that showing emotions means that you're weak, especially if you are a male. Or we're just simply taught that we just don't talk about certain things. And so I did what most of us tend to do, is I tried to suppress those feelings and try to pretend like they didn't exist. So I created this facade, and I put on my smile, and I went out into the world, and I presented one way in public, but in private, I was struggling, and I mean struggling, trying to manage all of these big emotions and thoughts and feelings, and nobody had given me the tools nor the proper guidance on how to do so. But I didn't really care because I was determined that I was going to make it, fake it until I made it. But for some of us, that's if we actually make it. But everybody's got a story to tell. But the question is, who is writing your story? Are you allowing the thoughts and the feelings of your family or your friends to narrate your story? Or are you allowing the perceived perceptions of others or the fear of being judged by others, are you allowing that to narrate your story? Or are you avoiding certain traumas or certain hurt feelings from the past and you're allowing that to narrate your story? What if you were willing to own and accept everything about you, meaning the good stuff, the bad stuff, and that ugly stuff that you try to pretend like that's not there, but that's always in the back of your mind saying, I'm still here? Yes, all of that stuff. Because doing so means that some type of acknowledgement has to happen. And acknowledgement is said to be the first step to any type of change. And acknowledgement is defined as the acceptance of the truth or existence of something. So that means you have to be willing to acknowledge the fact that there is a problem or an issue that you need to resolve or address. Then you have to be willing to acknowledge that you're going to have to sit and process through those feelings and those thoughts that are attached to whatever that issue or that problem is. Then you have to be willing to acknowledge the fact that once you start to take ownership of your own personal story, some of the people that are around you may end up changing. And you have to learn to be okay with that. Because sometimes you gotta face the music and play by yourself. Now for me, I've always been very honest and very transparent about the things that I have experienced and continue to experience. And you can imagine some people are not really well, they don't really receive it very well. But for me, I've never really cared because you don't have the right to tell me how to feel or how to tell my story. So that means I've had to go without some things throughout my life. So I've had to go without having very close relationships with my parents or having close relationships with my biological family. I've lost friends along the way. I've had people walk away from me. I've had people judge me or ignore me or just not interact with me for whatever reason. I've missed out on being in relationships, being overlooked for relationships, all because people didn't either understand my story or they weren't willing to accept that my story didn't fit in the genre that they were trying to put it in. But I have to tell my story in my own way and on my own terms because I owe it to myself to do so.
Yes.
But along the way, I was able to find people who either understood my story, related to my story, just simply listened to my story, or they appreciated me for sharing my story. And those people became my village, or in other words, they became my chosen family. And those were the people who helped support me and motivated me throughout all of the difficult times. But one of my friends told me, don't ever underestimate the power of your story, because the best of your story has yet to be told. And so I haven't shared the best of my story so far. But being that I am a black male who is openly gay and living with a mental disorder, society already has a narrative that is created that they want me to follow or live by. And I am here for it. Because once I decided to take ownership of my own story at an early age, I was then able to go on and accomplish the things that I wanted to accomplish. So I was able to go to college, the first one in my family to go to college and obtain a bachelor's degree. And then I went on to obtain my master's degree. Able to obtain my clinical license for a couple of years. And then I've been able to accomplish two of the major goals that I made for myself when I was young. The first being that because I had people pour into me and support me and just see me when I was younger, my whole thing was I wanted to pay them back by paying it forward. And while doing that, I wanted to create my own family and create my own legacy. And I've been able to do that by being a foster parent for the last 7 years. And I've had 12 children come into my home, and I adopted my first son in 2020. And I'm preparing to adopt my second son in a couple of months. Yeah. The second goal was I wanted to become a foster care social worker. And I was able to do that. But then the goal shifted to I wanted to find a position that gave me joy and gave me a sense of purpose. And I was able to find that in the position as you all support that. On top of that, with my 20 plus year mental health journey, and it has been a journey, and it will be a journey for those of us that are dealing with mental health issues. It is a journey. But for the first time, I feel like I have a handle of it, and I'm able to manage it versus having it manage me. Also, I've been able to do things that I never really even considered. I bought a house. I've traveled overseas to different countries. I've just been able to do things that have made me happy and just things that I enjoy. So I decided to share my story with you all with the hopes that maybe it will inspire you or encourage you to take ownership of your own stories so that you all will be able to create your own happy endings on your terms and by what you want to do and see for your lives. Because in my past, it's been hard as hell. You will never know how much pain I felt. But everybody's got a story to tell. Sometimes you gotta face the music and play by yourself. So, I'm going to leave you all with this. Do not be afraid to take ownership of your story because you have the power to become the writer. You just have to be willing to pick up the pen. So to